I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello, and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com. And joining me in the studio, crying into a bucket hat that he didn't spend July 4th in Cardiff, it's Andy Greenwald!
How do you think we would have fared if we had been at the Oasis reunion concert this weekend?
Andy, among other things, that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. So we have the Oasis reunion concerts. Mm-hmm. They've kicked off. I think it's going to be like an 18-month tour. Maybe not that long, but it's a long tour that they're on.
They're coming here.
They are coming here in September. We're going to talk about that. As promised, we're going to talk about the first few episodes of the Eternaut on Netflix and Smoke on Apple. Just the first episode there, because that was an hour and change.
Also, the Eternaut, I feel like we should divide our conversation. I want to get people hype, and then we can tell them to skip. You know what I mean?
What do you mean?
Like, we're going to tell you. Which camera am I in? We're going to tell you why you should watch this show.
Yeah.
Like we used to in the old days.
We can make that the headline of the podcast.
You should watch this. And then maybe we can spoil a little bit, but okay.
What's up, bud? Just a couple of housekeeping things.
Sure.
You can email us at thewatch@spotify.com, and goddamn it, if you're not emailing us, I apparently had some pretty restrictive spam stuff on.
Talk to the people about this.
And there's like 250 emails I have to get through, but I have been sorting through them, and there have been some. We've tapped a rich vein of back and forth.
Kaya had this too. What were some of the filters? Like no compliments are allowed in?
I really don't know, honestly.
We had a pretty strenuous pro Andy filter on.
That one broke.
For what it's worth, that's not usually a problem in most inboxes.
So please email us. Keep emailing us. We actually have an email from a listener in Argentina that we're going to share today.
Speaking of far-flung places, we got some emails about my Dave Sushi journey
really
in Bozeman. I love that.
Both sides of the issue.
True.
Pro and anti-Dave.
We're here to listen.
You can follow us on Instagram, thewatchpod_. You can watch us on YouTube, the Ringer-TV YouTube channel. Plus, you can watch us on Spotify, where I hope you're listening to us. And, July 4th, long weekend.
We saw each other. That was nice.
We did. But the big culture story, the big culture headline, I think, for aging white men.
Jurassic Park.
I saw it. I enjoyed myself. I was in.
That made so much money.
It did. Yes. Well, I mean, people like looking at dinosaurs generally. But Oasis played, speaking of dinosaurs.
Nice.
Oasis kicked off their reunion tour. Mm-hmm. It's been a decade.
15 years since the brothers last played together.
That's right. And I saw them in, I want to say like 08, 09 at MSG. But I actually had gone for the opening act.
Well, that is, okay. That is.
You want to double idiot me? It was Ryan Adams. I was going to see Ryan Adams in the Cardinals.
Did you leave?
It was
before?
08. What do you want from me? And
wow.
But Oasis were fine. Mm-hmm. I thought, like they were playing later period Oasis stuff and then rewarding the crowd with like the hits at the second half of the set. Mm-hmm. I remember it just was like a lot of Heathen Chemistry, but I actually like Heathen Chemistry.
You are zagging all over this podcast.
And they did not make the same mistake with their reunion shows. Obviously, if you've looked at Twitter or Instagram, like you've got my algorithm. It's all over that. And I wanted to know if you watched it and if you had a FOMO.
My algorithm is all Oasis clips and that one Italian chef who's like, the tomatoes, and he gets like real in your face. And he's like,
Is that guy Federico that I sent you?
He's like white-haired dude, and he's just like sensuously eating everything.
Oh no, not
up against
guy.
The camera.
This is a guy who has like a New York City apartment, and he makes like a beautiful fish and veg every night, and then his wife's like, too much lemon.
Boy. That is facts. that just cut me to the bone.
What did you think of the clips that you saw? And did you have FOMO? Do you wish you had gotten on a jet plane?
Well, so there's a lot to unpack here, because when I saw that they opened their first show in 15 years at the stadium with Hello, into Acquiesce, into
Morning Glory, into Some Might Say.
Oh, come on, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
That is real wild.
Yeah.
That is, God, man, you never read books, I know you do, where they're like, heroin in the 70s was better. That's what I think this is like.
You never read books that say that?
That's the only books that I read. That's my genre.
Yeah.
That is so wild and so good. And then you're reading, but then you kind of keep reading. And our buddy John Caramonica at the Times went to the show and was reviewing it. And there's a couple.
Great review by John.
I thought so too. And I thought that
captured the poetry of the moment.
That's what I want to talk to you about, because they played those songs and they sound fucking amazing. And those songs are undeniable. And you look at the set list and it's incredible. And also, do you want to discuss, you also already diagrammed the entire plan for the evening, because there is a little Noel high-flying bird solo set there.
That's when you get 9 Carlsbergs.
That's when you just go to the loo, you come back. It's actually respectful of the crowd. But the one I was
actually,
watching,
I really like Talk Tonight. I just don't know if it plays to 62,000 people.
It's also you got to at our age, and frankly at their age, you got to balance things out. You got to be reasonable. My thing with it is those songs sounded amazing, and the songs are amazing, and the majesty of the vibe of those songs is amazing. I will say that they have not spent the 15 years working up some bands. They are still the same live band that they were when I saw them. I was just Googling the date. I was like, I probably saw them around the same time. I saw them in June of 2001 at Radio City Music Hall.
We were so innocent then.
Different time.
Yeah. Radio City.
Yeah, that was for
Standing on the shoulder of giants. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were awful. Like they are not a traditionally good live band. They sit there and they like shout the songs.
The entire thing is basically what mood is Liam in. If I remember, like when I saw them in 2009, it was just like his voice, I would say, was going a little bit. Like, so he was sawing off the end of all the lines and like backing away from the microphone.
That's what he does now. That's still, he puts his arms behind his back as if he's having some sort of GI distress. And then he leans forward for the lyrics and he steps back after every lyric like he's just finished. And then he goes back in again.
Yeah.
And they don't speak. And then they just sort of plow through the hits. And then all these articles are like, and then in the 99th minute, Liam touched Noel's shoulder in a brotherly way. And they're like, oh my God. So my question for you is, and this was the first show, that it's going to be, who knows what'll happen in when they actually get to like Wembley. And also,
they're playing Manchester tonight.
Noel, for what it's worth, this is so sad to say that Noel is the more emo one of the two, but in the clips that I saw, he does seem to be a little bit like, holy shit.
Yeah.
He
gets very emotional, like especially during like Slide Away.
I mean, I get emotional during Slide Away.
And during Don't Look Back in Anger, I think the crowd singing back to him gets him real pumped up.
Here's the question, and maybe I'm answering it myself. When you're playing the hits in stadiums, which are not famous for their fidelity or audio fidelity or the intimacy of the experience, is this maybe the best form to see Oasis? Because what you're doing is you're investing in the vibes and the memories and the experience. Like, is this the best version of Oasis? Or do you think you'd go to these concerts and be like, I'm a little disappointed in the performance? Like, do you actually like what's coming from the stage other than the songs? I think it would be the camaraderie,
you know?
With your mates.
Yeah. I think it would be about me and the boys going out, you know, and really like connecting through chemicals and through like
me. Sick boy.
Begbie.
Yeah.
Begbie was definitely at that concert.
Begbie was glassing people left and right.
I agree with you that they are, you know, the thing I wanted to ask you about really was more how wild it is now that you have high definition, basically pro shot video in almost real time, if not real time, coming out of these concerts to the point where you're like, kind of feel like I saw it. Kind of feel like I might save the 500 when they come to Rose Bowl. I mean, I obviously would love to go see them at the Rose Bowl. Because that seems amazing.
It is that's the same.
But this is the same thing that kind of happened to pro sports, where it's like good TVs killed bleacher seats to some extent. Because you can go for the vibe and you can go to hang out in the sun and drink some beers. But it's
more than that. It's like, remember when Bill was saying, is like 5 years ago, he's like, my son Ben doesn't watch the games. He watches the recap clips.
No, this is all Ben Simmons' fault.
Both Ben Simmons. If your name is Ben Simmons, you're on the wall.
But you know what I mean? Like, it's like why would you go to a nosebleed seat?
Well, I think,
unless it was like a really important game when you can see it and listen to Doris Burke describe the action.
Because, first of all, would you like to just riff on Doris Burke at Cardiff?
The TV?
Doing the Oasis show? I feel like you could, especially with the brotherly aspect of it. I feel like there's a little Doris.
We see you, Noel.
No, it's more like we see you, bonehead.
We see you, Joey Waronker.
The lone American waving the stars and stripes. I think that this is live music, the festivalization of live music continues apace, right? Like people are going to these shows. This is the perfect moment for them to reunite because the live experience, and the reason why I think live music still is doing well is because there's an expectation now. It is a whole day's worth. It is an event. You're going with people. You're dressing a certain way. You're behaving a certain way. You're surrounded by people who are similarly minded. You're not, not doing friendship bracelets like at a Swiftie show. Perhaps you are downing pints. What is the equivalent?
Friendship 8 balls? I don't know.
Everyone's old now, though. We should be careful
straws?
about that, too. Did anyone do
I don't think nothing deters English people
from getting after it?
Yeah.
No, we both have experienced that recently.
Yeah.
And I've tapped out pretty quick. Has there been a lot of exit polling from Cardiff in terms of just like the demographics of that show? Like, are there people?
I mean, Yasi was there. I mean, I think it's attracting. It's a huge tent.
Are there people in their 20s being like, I can't believe I missed them, but
this is the
band
thing. They're
is
such a
everything for me.
durable band. Those songs sound the same to me today that they did then. They have not really aged that much.
No.
It's like a kind of perfect example of like where the future stopped, like the kind of the slow cancellation of the future. Like we don't iterate off this
Francis Fukuyama end of history. Is that where you're going?
No, Mark Fisher.
Okay.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. We can get into the slow cancellation of the future later. But I was just my last question for you.
Great.
What would you do if you had seen the guy who's gone viral, who was Shazamming Bittersweet Symphony at the concert when Richard Ashcroft was singing?
I have not seen this. Is that real? Yeah. So wait, so Richard Ashcroft opened the show solo.
Yeah.
And was performing the hits of The Verve.
Yeah.
And he sang their biggest hit.
Yes.
And there was a guy Shazamming it.
Yeah.
Did it come up as a Rolling Stones song? Just because of the legal parameters of that?
Of it, yeah.
So what was your question?
Would you have slapped the phone out of his hand? Would you have been like, it's Bittersweet Symphony. It's off Urban Hymns.
I probably would have been sitting there with my copy of The End of History, just nodding smugly. But wait, no, but I don't think that's a bad thing. If someone's like, oh, this is a tune, innit?
Yeah, and I guess maybe you would be a little bit nervous to turn to a balding lad and just be like, what's this song? Yeah,
so it was a young person doing it?
I couldn't tell his age. You know how English people look. Like
they look 15 until they're 55. Yeah. It is a quick cliff.
Did you look at the set list thoroughly?
Did Ashcroft do a lot of songs from Alone with Everybody?
I don't.
His solo
I didn't
debut?
see his set list. I mean, Oasis is because the last question I had was: is there anything that they didn't play that you wish they had?
I don't think that
Columbia, My Big Mouth.
Okay, you clearly have some. Why don't you get these takes off, King?
As I said with the Heathen, I think it's Heathen Chemistry. Is Lila and Mucky Fingers on that?
Oh, Lila's good.
Yeah.
Gas Panic.
Yeah.
Off of Standing Shoulder Giant.
Yeah.
Giant Shoulder. I honestly wish they had done a thing that other legacy artists have done, where if either any of the members have made songs that are really canonically belong to the band, they just kind of push them into the official set list.
Is there any High Flying Bird material that you think deserves Oasis?
No, Liam's Wall of Glass, which is the greatest Oasis song of the last 15 years.
Wall of Glass, huh?
Yeah. I'm checking to make sure I get that right before the
you
emailers
Liam
come
to
after
get really
me.
mad about this.
Wall of Glass, great song.
Okay, see you at the Rose Bowl in September.
Are we going to go?
Yeah, why not? If I'm in town.
I mean, I can think of 100 reasons why not, but I think that would be awesome.
This doesn't matter, but like I find the Rose Bowl needlessly complicated to get into.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That's why.
It's awesome and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But there's like one road.
So your plan to fix Los Angeles is more roads? This is.
You know what? Honestly, we do need more roads.
This is your Robert Caro fix.
We need a monorail.
Not Robert Caro. What's his name?
Robert Moses.
Moses. Caro wrote about him. We do need a monorail.
One other quick piece of news.
Is rock back though? Is that the takeaway?
No.
Sad. Here's the question. Ready? Kaya, are you going to go see Oasis this fall?
Kaya, did you black out for 5 minutes while we talked about Oasis?
Kaya, be honest. What's on your screen right now while we've been talking about Oasis? Also, is it lunchtime? How long have you been talking?
No, I probably won't be. I'm going to go see Haim in the fall. That's my...
Oh,
That's your Oasis.
Did you get tickets?
I did.
Also familial,
Yeah, but they get along.
Yeah.
Well, sisters. It's different. It's a different vibe.
Did you know that Netflix has got an itchy trigger finger? And it started canceling shows a little bit more frequently. Actually, I don't know if it's more frequently, but these 3 shows, Pulse, which was the Miami Hospital show, which had the misfortune of going up against The Pit. No Good Deed, the Lisa Kudrow and Ray Romano show has been put on hiatus and may come back with a different cast. Like, I guess it would turn into more of an anthology.
A comp that our listeners might be familiar with for that is Stick the Landing, the podcast.
Yeah. And The Residents, which was a comic whodunit set at the White House.
From Shonda, though.
Yeah, and starring Uzo Aduba. That got canceled after one season, despite being critically well-liked.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
What's up with this?
I'll be honest with you, it's hard to tell. They're so opaque with things. It's generally hard to tell what they do, what they're doing, and why they do it.
Do you think it would just be a matter of the data? Like whether it was the cost versus
ultimately it's the data and the breakthrough. I do think that they are not as numbers bound as they would like you to believe. I think that if things break through in a meaningful cultural way or an awards way or with a certain tastemaker set, certainly not aging podcasters, but otherwise, I think they are responsive to that. I think you can't look at these three things and draw a giant conclusion. I think the biggest one about Pulse is what you said. Netflix was super hype on this show. Even, when we have off-the-record conversations with people there, like that's the thing they were checking for.
Yeah,
they thought they were going
to... I think I even was in my mind like these two, this is sort of the Chicago hope of ER.
Yes.
And it was like...
And it was.
It was a little bit more soapy and sillier than not silly like tonally, but like I was like, this is a silly show. It's about like a hurricane hitting a school bus and stuff,
But it was interesting. So Pulse was their attempt they've eaten up everything else of the industry. Now they're going to eat up broadcast TV.
Yeah.
And it felt like with all of the weight of Netflix and all the intention of Netflix saying, this is what we're doing, it felt almost inevitable. If you compare it to The Pit was not only did they take the people who were responsible for the things that people loved in the 90s, it didn't iterate the idea to the extreme degree that I think skeptics might have believed that they would. Even when it started, I think you and I were like, oh, so this is going to be ER, sorry lawyers, but, gorier or turn to 11. It was not that. Pulse seemed like it had more in common with what broadcast TV has been doing this century.
Yeah.
Like 911 or even Empire. Of like, let's just push everything up and make it as noisy as humanly possible, which is not what traditional TV fans wanted, or it's what they've already gotten. It didn't really fill the need.
Yeah.
So I'm not, and also it just didn't make a sound in the wake of The Pit. The Residents is the one that surprises me the most because it did seem, to be kind of buzzy. I mean, I don't have access to their numbers, but I was definitely aware of it existing and people being fans of it. It also seemed repeatable, like they were going to go to different residences. And it's Shonda. And I kind of just thought that because of her pedigree and the relationship with Netflix, that Netflix would be like, if it's on the fence, if it's on the bubble, they would give it a second go-round.
I would love to like look at, aside from the YA leaning stuff, how much of their quote unquote prestige drama gets more than 3 seasons. It really does seem like they've kind of changed the paradigm to where like shows kind of wrap up after.
Sure, but like this didn't even get a second season.
I know. I'm just saying like they are quick to pull, like they'll pull the ripcord if they don't like what the numbers are showing them.
Also, it's certainly not.
Whereas Apple seems to be like, sure, here's a 5th season.
Yeah, it's also, but with Netflix, it's not a resource. Like, it's not like they don't have other things. It's not like their service will be lacking or someone will be like, oh, nothing new this week. That's never going to be an issue for them. So the benefit of the doubt, like, maybe goes away a little bit. It's also worth having the conversation in the light of the other story that Hollywood Reporter ran over the weekend. Headline, Netflix says 50% of global users now watch anime, reveals expanded slate, that their viewership of anime has tripled over 5 years. And so they are, it's unlike with FX or something where they're like, oh, we've got a bunch going in our drama development pipeline. We're ready to say goodbye to a bubble show or something like that. Netflix is, it's shopping in all the aisles of the supermarket. So it's not like it cancels The Residents because it has other dramas. It cancels The Residents because people are watching something else completely different.
Yes.
And they can put resources in that direction.
While we concern troll or ask questions of Netflix, we should also throw some flowers their way because the Eternaut
Are we doing it?
Is like a perfect example of their great contribution to television, which I think is making one of their contributions is making international television widely available to audiences over here that maybe ordinarily wouldn't check it out. Now, a couple years ago, Andy and I fell in love with a German sci-fi show called Dark that we spent a lot of time talking about, and me and Jason Gallagher recapped the last 2 seasons, I think, maybe, because you were doing your show. I think.
I'm always happy to throw Jason Gallagher some work.
And that was on this pod. But the Eternaut, like, reminds me of Dark in that sensation of like, this is familiar. Like, there's stuff, this is a post-apocalyptic drama, there's sci-fi, there's environmental crisis, there is our greatest, our own worst enemy kind of thematic stuff going on. But God, this is escapism / tourism for audiences who don't get to go to Argentina or have never been to Argentina. You can feel and this is an Argentinian show, you can feel the infrastructure of Buenos Aires, the textures, the architecture, the rhythms, the customs, the culinary, like even like little bits of like where people get food or like different markets and drugstores. And it is all comes to life, even though it's a show set in a period when everything is dying.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about this.
But it's not just, first of all, I fucking love this show. I think it's so sick.
It came
I'm
out,
so excited
it came
about
out in
it.
May. Yeah.
But I think it's worth noting. So we're going to talk about it broadly. We're going to try to get people to watch it.
Yes.
And maybe we can run a little alert signal, Chernobyl music, and say like we're going to spoil a little bit.
I think after Last of Us Season 2, we're not allowed to use Chernobyl music anymore.
Okay, fair. We're going to do the first half. We each watched 3 of the 6 episodes, I believe. I think it's important to say it's not just location tourism, which I am a sucker for and I love. There is a real cultural personality and fingerprint on the story itself, how the story is told, what is significant in the story that makes it feel specific and compelling in a way that is markedly tactile different than if this was just another Hollywood or American television production. I would compare it to Dark, or the experience of falling in love with it, to watching Dark, but also Les Revenants, the French show about supernatural events. It's pretty cool to experience what we often, maybe with our limited thinking, consider to be like Hollywood genre storytelling refracted through the cultural prisms of another country and another perspective.
Yeah.
So when we say The Eternaut is a comic book adaptation, it's worth noting that this is an Argentine cult comic from the late 50s.
Yes.
This is a different type of graphic storytelling brought to the screen. I wish I could stunt here and say I'm as familiar with this as I am with Riri Williams, the titular Ironheart. I am not.
Yeah.
I think Fantagraphics, the great independent comic publisher, produced a translated version of this about a decade ago. I don't even know if it's still in print. Hopefully it's coming back into print if it's not. But was completely unfamiliar with it. But it's the kind of thing that when you see like just the one still image from the comic, you're like, oh, that's pretty cool.
I mentioned that we got a really cool email about this show from a listener in Argentina, so I thought I would just read that because it gives a lot of background and context.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Hi, Chris and Andy. Greetings from Argentina.
Here you go.
I'm a longtime listener of the pod and got really excited to hear that you guys will be covering El Eternauta next week. El Eternauta is a very important IP here in Argentina and means a huge deal to us. Everyone has read or at least heard of the original 1950s comic book, and the main character is an iconic figure full of symbolic value. The story's author, Hector G. Oesterheld, was sadly tortured and murdered by the dictatorial military regime during the 70s. They hated him and his political views and understood that the ideas from the comic book were too subversive for people to read. In addition, his 4 daughters were kidnapped and disappeared. 3 of his sons-in-law also disappeared. 2 of his daughters were pregnant at the time of their kidnapping and are believed to have given birth in captivity. These horrors from dark times that took place in our country are strongly linked to interpretations of the story. It's impossible to read the comic or watch the TV show and not see the thing that happens in the show or the killing snow as a metaphor for something else. This is a story that took a long time to get adapted to the screen, and I think the show really nails it. Truly pays homage to the original material while also allowing for some changes. It's a product that makes us Argentinians really proud, as we rarely get to see local productions with this scope, especially not sci-fi action shows like this one. And then this person goes on to take issue with the fact that I like Boca instead of River Plate.
This is great.
Yeah.
I like this guy. Can I read the rest of the email later?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the email, Andy.
I love this. And I also just, again, best case scenario for Netflix, particularly with their international expansion, is building up their business in cultural hubs around the world.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it can be a nightmare in development everywhere. But like one of the things about Dark that we loved was that it seemed like whether it rose to the top immediately or whether it was a more challenging development situation, either way, the product was like, this is kind of like best case scenario for a big budget streamer saying, what have you got? How can we help you make it? Bruno Stagnaro is the creator of this, directed a lot of the episodes, adapted a lot of the episodes. And I'm not familiar with the comic. What I loved about it was how completely confident it is, both in its storytelling, in its introduction to a world and a crazy event that we're going to talk about, but also how true it is to its aesthetic and point of view.
Oh my God,
so that
yeah.
even when things get amplified, they are done with such artistry and restraint and consistency, right? So that the world that we enter in the beginning, when it's just Buenos Aires, feels consistent even when things have gone completely to shit. So should we talk about the stuff that happens?
Yeah, sure. So I guess if you don't want to know anything about this show.
Well, you got to know one thing, which is crazy shit happens and it's kind of a dystopian end of the world show, but it doesn't feel like an American one. Okay, before we talk about the plot, let me just say one last thing about it. If this had been an American, this feels like something that I'm sure Hollywood people have attempted to get the rights to and adapt many times. I just assume that because it's a huge, big story. There's something that feels so.
It's also not unlike something like, say, The Mist, like the Stephen, like the Frank Darabont adaptation of the Stephen King. Yeah,
and I mean, it feels like, and this is another reason why I really loved it. It's a zombie story without zombies, in the sense of like a sudden survival story, and the enemies, of course, are ourselves, but they're also not trying to turn into mushrooms and eat our organs.
Yeah.
At least not yet, through 3.
So the story opens. Go ahead.
I just want to say last thing. If this had been workshopped in a Hollywood development process, the first thing that would have been thrown away would be the cast of characters as inherited from the comic book. Because the main character, and again, I don't know how old he is in the comics, in order to cast the legendary Argentine actor Ricardo Darín, he's almost 70. It's a bunch of like middle-aged, shout out the Oasis crowds, it's a bunch of middle-aged dudes playing cards.
Yeah, late middle-aged guys who get together to play cards in one of their buddies' basements one night.
There is not a lot of, and I say this as someone who is quite liberal, there's not a lot of like token diversity in the swath of Buenos Aires that they show us. And I appreciate that.
Some in 3.
Sure. I'm saying it is a diverse living metropolis. And even like Ingo's a character that's created for the TV show is not Argentinian and is of a different social strata and everything. I'm not saying, I want to be very clear. I'm not saying the show is good because it's not woke. I'm saying that it is a very, very specific vision of what would happen to these people in this one pocket of one place.
Yes.
And it's not that randomly on this one night, there was, there was some sort of like club meeting with representatives from every corner of the city of all age groups, also with one super sexy lady, which I feel like would be the Hollywood version. Like it's just, you just feel that so much. Everyone is in American stuff, even when they try not to, everyone's teeth are perfect and they're kind of young. Like that's just the default setting. And I love that it's not that.
Yeah. So it opens up with, not unlike, say, Lost, some other sci-fi leaning shows, there will be these little cold opens for the episodes that might introduce you to different characters right before everything changes in Argentina and beyond. And for the first episode, we meet Juan, as mentioned by Andy, a few of his friends, they get together to play cards. There have been these power outages in Buenos Aires over the course of the summer. Everybody's sort of pissing and moaning about the government, the infrastructure, how things are going.
Is the country failing on some level?
Yeah. And
it could never be us.
Eventually there is a full blackout and then snow starts to fall.
It's the middle of summer.
Unseasonally. Yeah. And at first they think it's a electrical fire or a fire at an electric station and that there's asbestos in the air. And they quickly realize that beyond it being whether it's asbestos or not, people, if you inhale the snowflakes, if you inhale the atmosphere,
if you're outside,
you die almost instantaneously. And it's, creates this incredible puzzle plot of, okay, they happen to be playing cards at this very toolsy kind of fixer-upper DIY guy's house. He has one gas mask. How are they going to get out, get supplies, get information?
Sidebar, how many do you have?
You know what? I think I do have a gas mask in Philadelphia, but not for any reasons that I'm interested in talking about.
The Laramie Tunsil? Was that you?
I love you. You've never watched that guy play a down of football, but you know
Is he still in the league?
Yeah, he is actually.
That's cool.
Anyway, he's on the Commanders. We're gonna have to see him twice this year.
Not worried.
Okay. Anyway, so the snow is falling. Something is wrong. Power's out, and immediately everybody's personalities. I love this. A lot of the times, like in these apocalyptic sort of survival stories, you know, you get a pretty clear idea even before the events of like who's who. And I like how people change in this show. I like how people react to crisis. And, you know, some are very like creative and they're like, oh, I can do this and we can do that. But some are setting all these rules and making all these sort of declarations of how things are going to be. Others are needlessly rebellious. Like there's a lot of like sort of evolution to the characters, which makes it very interesting to watch beat by beat. And another thing I'll say about this is that there is a storytelling style and a pacing style to the show that can feel laconic at times. Like you're just like, oh, this scene is going on for a while, or like we're hanging out in this living room for a long time. And then almost inevitably, every little bit, every detail winds up mattering. So it's like incredibly expansive, but not inefficient storytelling.
I think that's well said. There's a collection of details that I love that I feel like when describing it, it will make the show sound conventional, but sometimes convention can be helpful guardrails. Like the introduction of an antagonistic couple at an inopportune moment in the third episode is mostly memorable because in the moment, it teaches us something about Juan, his ex-wife, Elena, and the troubles, the almost Herculean task they've set out, which is to find their teenage daughter.
Yes.
Who we know because of the opening flashback is not anywhere where anyone would think she would be.
Yes.
So in that moment, it's a very purposeful scene. It's teaching us about who they are morally. It's teaching them about the world that they are now existing in only 2 days into this apocalypse. And that's that. What it also does is gives the filmmakers an opportunity to introduce, as Jack Donaghy would say, a third heat to this post-apocalyptic or this apocalyptic storyline by having people the audience has already judged to be morally bad. And bad things happen to them, and we learn about a new bad through them. Yeah. If that makes sense. I feel like that's kind of horror movie logic, but I don't watch a lot of horror movies. But in the sense that like the show is communicating to us to whom bad things can and should happen before maybe they invert it later on. Yeah, and I also think that like I mentioned with each new challenge, it might change the way a character behaves. Like that happens over the course of the first 3 episodes where certain, you know, Juan might be kind of behaving in one way in the first 2 episodes, but as the prospect of finding his teenage daughter becomes apparent, or that becomes his mission, he becomes a lot more kind of cutthroat and direct about what he's going to need to do. And this kind of culminates in an amazing second episode for the show. And I would say if you watch the first one and you're like, okay, I've seen this before. I feel like this is kind of along the lines of what I've kind of become familiar with this dystopian stuff. The second episode is largely set in an apartment tower and has just enough J.G. Ballard, like how soon would it take before everything goes to shit kind of satire of society. It has a great cold open of a bunch of people basically arguing about co-op board. Yeah, a co-op board argument. And what plays out in that second episode is like, that's the selling point. By the way,
you guys got to check that out.
I had a co-op in New York, and that shit is always on the razor's edge of violence.
But you know what? You did, and it wasn't on the razor's edge of violence, but didn't you have like complications?
I'm saying, those are going to be the first to tip in to dystopia, like gladly.
Yeah.
That whole thing builds so beautifully, but also it has such a smart sense of scale.
Oh my
because everything hinges on a mask or how many bullets are in one handgun,
Yes.
or where you are in the building in relation to windows, or what floor you're on. It is ground level. And we have seen, and we've talked about, like, one of the things that was cool about the first season of The Walking Dead was, much like with 28 Days Later, what the fuck just happened? We are not people who are equipped to know about this. We are not at the upper echelons of society. It's the inverse of something we were praising recently, the big 7th episode of Paradise, which is narrating an end of the world scenario from the seat of power. This is bottom up storytelling, and it seems anyway through 3 that it is in no hurry to let us know, to give us any glimpse of something bigger outside of the experience of these characters in a moment-to-moment way. You're talking about how the characters change. Like another really great character is Tano, played by Cesar Troncoso, who's an Uruguayan actor who's awesome, makes a really strong first impression. I love the fact that he is, at least through the first episode, for 1.5 episodes, he is the guy that you are lucky to be around when the shit goes down.
Yeah, because he can fix a radio and fix a battery.
And figure stuff out. And also, as alluded to by other characters, he's kind of into this stuff. Like, he reads stories, he watches, presumably he's watched all the TV shows that have come out about end of the world scenarios. So he's not a full-on prepper, but he's a low-key prepper.
Yeah.
As it turns out, being overly prepped may be a downside for your mental health and for your relationships.
Yeah.
Sidebar here, whenever we talk about dystopian shows, you proudly say that you would probably be pretty good at this. Did this show change your point of view in any way?
Well, I mean, it kind of doesn't matter because the math problem it presents is not one that I would be able to solve in terms of, well, like, if we can't go outside, we can't go outside. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think I would do better in a slow-moving zombie situation than I would be in the atmosphere itself is poison. And now, of course, you know, we like, because the show needs to expand and move, like, we find a lot of gas masks. Like, we get to the fire station, we go and we do that. I don't know that would have occurred to me, for instance.
To go to the place where there might be masks.
Yes. Like, I don't think I ever even thought about, like, oh yeah, firefighters have to wear gas masks when they go into fires.
I also think that the show...
Although now I know that after watching Smoke.
There is a little conversation between these shows. I was talking to my kids this morning, and my older daughter was we were talking about times they've gotten... This is a classic driving to camp conversation. Times they've gotten sick on vacation. Yeah. And my older daughter was like, it actually was pretty okay to get COVID in Hawaii because I don't really want to go. I don't really want to do anything. And I was like, so we took you on a real nice vacation and you didn't want to do anything? She's like, no, hotels are nice. I don't want to go outside.
Well,
so I was like,
everybody has that age, yeah.
Or that life. So I was like, in the world of the Eternaut, I think as long as... Now, to be clear, would Roblox be down?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So that might cause
some internet.
That might cause some problems.
Yeah.
Maybe. What about like first-gen iPads?
How would you do with no Eagles to follow?
Oh, if there was no Eagle season?
Yeah.
How would I fall asleep at night? How would I calm myself down? It would be. Yeah. It would be dire for me.
I wonder who Saquon's golfing with now.
In heaven, because he was on the back nine.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that it's worth noting, you don't need to have gotten a nice email like that or Googled the history of the show to understand that there was a actual reason politically, emotionally, culturally for this story to exist. Yes. It's just granular and you cannot separate it from the experience of watching it. Everything feels intentional and meaningful. The sense of dislocation from your neighbors, the fear of being outside of your home, the threat of becoming strangers to ourselves is just so powerfully enmeshed in what the show is. It's not just, it would be fucking sick, killer snow.
Yeah.
I find it kind of profound and really, it's like resetting my cultural, my entertainment meter.
Yeah.
To be like, this is really, really compelling genre storytelling for a reason.
It's a fantastic use of television as a storytelling format because I don't think in a film you could have all these sort of like side stories, side characters, give space and like concentrate on Omar, the guy who's sort of like the last invited to the card game and is brothers with a guy who's there, but like...
Who's an invented character as well.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's interesting to think what was added and what wasn't. I mean, when the story was written, there there weren't cell phones. There weren't cars with computers that were to be different from the cars that didn't have computers and thus worked.
Yeah.
So I think how they figured that out feels very natural to me. But again, I haven't read it. I really, how do you feel about watching this show post-COVID? Because again, this is a 70-year-old story, but it feels, especially from lived experience, very COVID-coded of the idea of like, what can we do? How much do we have to secure things? What do we have to get? How do we wash? How do we exist?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not looking forward to ever going back to that, I guess. I would say that I have a really weird relationship to popular culture that somehow captures or documents the previous 5 years.
Oh, sure.
Like, I'm not super excited to like dig into that yet. And I don't feel like we're really post-COVID in terms of like how it changed cities or how it changed the way people think or how it changed
empathy.
Yeah. So I'll let you know in a couple of years.
I think that's fair. I think the experience of watching
if the snow hasn't fallen on us again.
I think it's successful because it is not in any way about that.
Yeah.
But it's hard not to bring our own experiences to it. Like similarly, I was thinking about the how quick people turn, to revealing themselves or becoming feudalist or violent even. And it does make me think that like I love Lost. But one of the powerful zags of Lost was that it wasn't Lord of the Flies.
Mm-hmm.
That there was some aspirational, actually the best of humanity can emerge in these situations too. And that's something that, permission to live out for a second. I think that I kind of...
Well, you have to climb your way out of
believed.
Like, this show is it's thankfully not woke.
That's true. I've got a long way to go. But to watch this show and to live in America at this moment, it actually makes me think that Lord of the Flies is pretty prescient, and I don't know if I believe in the better angels of people at the moment. And it echoes that. It is, but to your point, the show is successful because it is what it is, and we're bouncing our own experiential context against it, not because it was, we've got an arrow aimed at the heart of 2025 consciousness.
Yeah.
It is not that at all. It's just also, I think it's kind of just a classy show, not just because of the quality of the performances and the sort of veteran actors like Doreen we mentioned is so good. It's just, it uses its, I think probably still by US standards, limited budget incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the vistas of snow-covered cities with occasional corpses and things is very, very effective.
Yeah.
And you feel the scope of it. Like even though, how many locations have we been to in 3 episodes? Maybe 6?
Yeah.
I feel a city.
Yeah.
I feel the scale of it when the radio suddenly is talking about there's one message from Uruguay or there's talk of southern Brazil. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is enormous and impossible to comprehend.
I do want to just hit that COVID bit one more time because I did think of one of the things that was sort of interesting about going through that period of time was how 6 weeks into it, it was like, yeah, we have like Zoom calls with our friends and like this is how we buy groceries. And it was like the adaptability was very quick. And that happens in this show as well. Like immediately they're like, we have to ration the water. This is, people have like kind of, you think in your mind, if snow fell in the summer and it became apparent that going outside would kill you, you would be like, well, I've lost my mind and I can't even understand reality anymore. But the human brain doesn't work that way. A lot of the times the human brain is like, how can I use this to my advantage? Or like, I have totally like now recalibrated myself.
It's the recalibration.
Yeah.
We walk around with these antennas just trying to make things normal all the time.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, I guess this is normal. Okay, but fine. This is the bottom now, right? This is normal. Did you see that video of the insane cloud that hit the beach? I think it was in Portugal and it wasn't Nazaré. That like, apparently it's a thing, but not professional meteorologists. It's like a roll cloud. Kai, did you see this? It's basically looks like a end of days rolling black cloud just sort of came in off the ocean and people were filming it and they were like, it was like Jaws. They were like, we have to get out of here. This is the end of everything.
Yeah.
And it wasn't yet, or maybe it was. But that how quickly it went from people like existentially, this is over and the impossible is possible to, I bet this could go viral if I post this on TikTok is pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, I think that should we maybe try to finish it for Thursday.
Yeah, I love the show.
Yeah.
And I think a couple weeks ago when we were talking about show of the summer, like I'm not saying this is the show of the summer, but
It can be for you.
but I do. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
My show of the summer is the 30-second clip of the Oasis reunion when they're doing Acquiesce. The ability to surprise.
Yeah.
That
This
feels
is what I was talking about. Like, what I want something to come out of nowhere and just like kind of be like, I can't wait to go home and watch one tonight. You know?
Yeah.
Let's talk about another show that came out in the summer,
Mm-hmm.
which is Smoke on Apple TV. This is from Dennis Lehane, who Andy and I have a lot of respect for. He wrote Mr.
Respect and
River. He
love.
wrote Gone Baby Gone. He wrote on the 3rd season of The Wire. He recently enough did Blackbird for Apple TV, and now is reunited with the star of Blackbird, Taron Egerton, to do this show, which is an adaptation of a podcast called Firebug, I believe. So this show is about an arson investigator played by Egerton, who's partnered with a police detective who's been kind of busted down to arson for reasons we'll get into. That's played by Journey Smollett. And, basically there are 2 serial arsonists terrorizing a Pacific Northwest town called Umberland. I guess you could just say it's Vancouver. It has released 3 episodes, I believe. Maybe the 4th one's come out already. I can't remember how Apple does it.
Out of how many?
9 episodes.
Wow.
Reviews for this one have been kind of all over the place. I've seen some that are like, oh my God, please stick with this. I've seen this is okay. I've seen this is bad. Where did you net out on this
Just
one?
to be clear, they dropped 2 episodes and now it's on a weekly schedule.
Gotcha. And so I watched the first one, which is an hour and 10 minutes. So I feel like I did a shift with it. But
the other thing that I would say is the some of the creative and executive brain trust behind the show is old HBO.
yeah,
Carrie
Plepler.
Anthalis, who is president of Cinemax and greenlit a lot of the great crime programming they used to do, like Banshee and Quarry, is involved with the show as an EP and also as a writer on one episode.
Yeah.
And Richard Plepler, who used to be the, I guess, CEO, he was the business half of the Michael Lombardo era and for
Do you not
20 plus years.
Plepler?
Yeah.
He's the Don.
We talk about Plepler on here. We were Plepler people.
And there was always going to be light rumors that he was going to maybe run Apple TV, right? At the beginning of the...
That because he was available around the same time.
Yeah.
But, then they were looking at his CV and they were like, you greenlit After the Thrones? They're like, we'll take a second meeting. But yeah, so I'm excited to talk to you about the show because here are the 2 things that I liked about it. I love Dennis Lehane. He's one of the great crime writers of our life. He's a lovely guy. We've talked to him on the podcast. I think it's so cool when crime writers who we admire so much on the page make a successful transition to the screen. Our friend and hero George Pelicanos, they're friends. He's done it as well.
Richard Price.
Price. I think it's awesome, and I want him to keep working and having these opportunities. You know what else I like about this show? Greg fucking Kinnear.
Okay.
Greg Kinnear plays
me
the fire chief, and he is such a breath of fresh air when he comes on the screen because he is an actor playing a character who has made specific choices and strikes me as someone who is alive in a world.
Okay.
That's the end of my praise.
Okay.
I hated the show.
I hated the first episode.
I hated the experience of watching it.
Yeah.
And we can go through the reasons, but I would say that my biggest reason was the direction.
Okay.
So this show was directed by
Carrie
Scogland, who we have seen from her work on Falcon and Winter Soldier. You said all the things that this show is about. I don't think it's about any of those, at least through a pilot. The pilot is about Carrie Scogland directing this episode.
Okay.
The camera does not chill the fuck out. If 2 people are talking in a scene, the camera is free-floating, being like, I don't know who to trust in this scene, but I know that I'm moving. When a character walks down a hallway in one scene, the camera is above the ceiling, tracking the ceiling lights. 2 people get in a car, camera's like, I'm going to hang out outside the car. 2 people are doing an investigation. Camera's like, I'm going to speed up and do this whole thing in triple time because this is about visual storytelling. I wish it wasn't about visual storytelling. A more boilerplate show about people investigating things with the time, space, and breath to develop performances, let alone characters, would have made me feel a lot more comfortable sitting there. Instead, I found the experience of watching this with its multiple layers of storytelling, because Egerton is he's an investigator, but he used to be a fireman, and he's also now writing a novel and narrating his, I think, intentionally bad prose as the story goes on, narrating it in his fucking dime store Tom Holland vibes. I was just so deeply out that I'm shocked that you were in.
Yeah,
I just feel like
fine.
I feel like this is an Apple thing. I don't understand.
I think that first of
made
all,
the show.
I would never dare to ask you to watch another episode, and I didn't watch the second one, but she does not direct the second episode.
That's right.
I thought that they were throwing a ton of stuff at the wall. It didn't strike me as overly busy, but I think one of the things that I enjoyed was that everything was kind of a cut above the kind of base average procedural. So especially the dialogue, I thought had some pepper to it. And even there's a scene where Egerton goes into a bar and the bartender, he's basically like trying to find out who was at a bar earlier. So he's talking to the bartender and the bartender's kind of giving him a hard time.
Then she goes, "Do you like vodka?"
No, she goes, I think he's threatening to like call the like inspection service to check out their kitchen. And finally she's like, "I like vodka." And he's like, "I too like vodka. I also like vodka." And there's just like a kind of cursive flair to the end of the sentence that I kind of like. And I feel like it comes up a bunch of times. I'm not saying it's reinventing the wheel or mind-blowing or anything like that, but I thought you could recognize that Dennis Lehane was writing the dialogue for this show.
Sure.
Let me keep going here.
All right,
go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
Keep going.
No, go ahead.
If you were about to praise Dennis Lehane, I'm here for that.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I don't think it's in Apple's mandate or in however they think of themselves as a streamer to let things just be. If letting them be means being the best possible version of themselves. Like when we watch like a great British procedural, I don't remember the last one that we loved was, or if there's the last one that you loved. It often is relaxed or character-based or not a lot of frippery and frills and overly directed cinematography or whatever. It's just is what it is. You don't see, like the opening of Smoke feels so expensive. And I feel like that's in the Apple purview, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Everything is extra mustard. Everything is chefed up to the point of, I think in this, just absolutely teetering incredulity. Like it's not actually doing the best version of the story that it could be if it just chilled the fuck out. The show just couldn't chill out because I think that in its DNA, Apple is like, what we do is everyone else makes gourmet hamburgers. We make the DB burger at Bar Ballood where he puts like fucking foie gras in the beef, and it costs $75 and there's a little gold leaf on top. Sometimes I don't want to eat that.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is the right vehicle for it. It is likely, and I think from people who have enjoyed more episodes, they're like, this is actually a compelling or psychologically rich crime investigation story, which I generally like.
Yeah.
But please continue.
I was just going to say that I also appreciated the fact that at least in the first episode, the lead was not like traumatized by fire. He just had like, all we know is that he had a bad experience with a fire, but like more or less seems well adjusted.
He's got a stepson and a wife.
I guess this is more, I don't want to get meta, but I guess this is more of a, do you think you're capable of like thinking a show is just okay?
Oh, yeah.
When's the last time that happened?
2021? No, I think that there's I mean this sincerely. I think that there is I sound like Joe Biden. You need to really listen to me here, folks. Let me be clear.
Yeah.
There is a version of this show that I think could be fine. I didn't go into this thinking this was going to be an A+. I actually thought, given the people involved, the pedigree exactly, that like this might be a really nice B. And sometimes I like a B. And I think that like artistically and aesthetically, and because of our fandom, like Department Q elevated. But I think Department Q at its heart is just a solid crime story that did elevate with some directorial flourish and some great writing and performances. But I don't think that is aiming to be the next great show. And I think it succeeds because it understands its goals and it also understands its strengths. I think that there is a B version of this, but I found it so deeply aggravating to watch it. Visually. And then also, honestly, like I didn't watch Blackbird. I've heard people really liked it.
Yeah.
Paul Walker Hauser got many awards.
Walter
Hauser got many awards for it. This is maybe outside of my children having the Sing movies on. This may be my first FaceTime with Taron Egerton. Mm-hmm. And I found him deeply implausible.
Never saw a Kingsman movie?
Never saw a Kingsman movie. Is he the king's boy in it? Is he the princeman?
He's the protege, yeah.
Is he good?
He's fine.
Because I think he's an entertainer,
Yeah.
but like I immediately did not buy him as a grizzled investigator or anything. I found his affect like very boyish.
He's
and
played now
unbelievable.
multiple. I mean, he obviously was Elton John in
Yes.
Rocketman, but he in Carry On, which was the Netflix like big holiday
Oh,
action
yeah.
movie. In this, like he has played like multiple versions of like a very anonymous character. Now, I think his character in this show has places to go.
Sure.
But yeah, I guess I just was like, I found myself responding to the music of the dialogue. And yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the scenes that really threw me were the ones between Journey Smollett and Rafe Spall, who seemed to be in a completely different show.
Totally different show.
Like they were in Long Day's Journey into Night in a hotel room, whereas like the rest of it has like a kind of tongue-in-cheek black comedy.
And I don't want to, again, I don't know Carrie Skoglund. She might be a great director in other things, and I don't want to put everything on her, because also who knows who had Final Cut, who took over things. But like Journey Smollett, who I like a lot as a performer, like I'm always happy to see her. My impression of watching this pilot is that there wasn't any room for there to be a character. What was left was her wearing Ray-Bans, elbowing in on people and being like, where were you that night? Like as if she was pretending to be a police officer. There was no person there. And I think that is, ultimately, that is a directorial decision too. If the camera's set up this way and you're doing these scenes a certain way, where do you find the performance?
I get so mad at directors.
Fucking directors need to chill out. Chill out, directors. Do you, I don't know if we ever talked about it. You talked about liking it, and then I don't think we ever talked about that I checked it out. But the filmmaker no, not this. The filmmaker who made the North Road, the Australian filmmaker.
Justin Kurzel.
Justin Kurzel. And you mentioned, there's some movies that he's made that you really liked. One of them was The Order.
Yeah.
And I went and I watched The Order.
Uh-huh.
And I really liked it.
She's in that too. Journey Smollett.
Yes. And but the comparison that I wanted to make in that is that in the movie The Order, which is a very, very American story, right?
Full of British people.
Full of British people.
Yeah.
But starring as like a grizzled rural cop, basically, or FBI agent, right, in the movie, is Jude Law. And when I was watching it, I was like, it's really good for the movie and for Jude Law that he's older now and that he's not like beautiful Dickie from Talented Mr. Ripley, because I'm just able to buy it. Taron Egerton, to play this part, needs to get back to me in 10 years. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's
like, a fair criticism.
That.
And so is your Carrie Skoglund. Like, I mean, I don't mean to name her, but so is your over-directed thing. I think that I knew you weren't going to love this.
Yeah.
The second they did it 2 weeks earlier, Flash.
Oh, and then it's 2 weeks earlier, and we're like, POV of an arsonist, and things are moving fast, and the
you know
chip
what it
bags,
kind of
and
reminded me of, and I don't mean like this, like to denigrate either filmmaker, but it kind of reminded me of sometimes when Danny Boyle is just trying to create
something
mustard from mayonnaise. He's just like, I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
Like the camera's flying here. We're going back in time. There's like another little like nesting doll of an idea here. Like it was all over the place, but it was strange to watch it with that Apple TV sheen on it, because it didn't feel raw and fun. I still would be curious to check out a couple more, but
But I appreciate, first of all, I appreciate the civil disagreement.
Yeah.
I do think that what in the harsh light of day, in the smoking embers of the Hobby Lobby that we were allowed access to 5 minutes after it burned, I feel like what annoys me about it was the chefing up, was the extra, was the way that this. And I think it's an Apple thing. Ultimately, I do. Like I don't. They can make people's business models are their own. That's their own decision making. But I think that it's just not in their brand to let something be good.
Yeah.
Or quiet.
Right.
Or chill. Everything has to be to 11, and it just doesn't serve this. At least in terms of. I don't know if it serves in terms of the series. You're right. It could chill out. Often pilot directors leave a mark, and then it's kind of slowly the dial goes down bit by bit over the course of series. But I think that the vehemence that I'm bringing to this podcast is just how turned off I was by the first episode.
Gotcha.
When I think the goal, honestly, of making something noisy is to turn people on and bring people in and get them watching more.
I'll check out another one and let you know how it is. But we will probably wrap up this week's their Thursday show. We'll probably wrap up Eternaut. Anything else you want to talk about today?
So it's like eternal, but not from the Greek.
I'm having a hard time.
Like traveler.
It does. I think the problem is that I say eternal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But in Spanish, it's not E, it's A.
So
Eternauta, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you this.
Okay.
Can you watch this Eternaut without subtitles?
No, because to me, Porteño Spanish, the Spanish of Buenos Aires, is so fucking wild.
So what Spanish do you feel most comfortable listening
all
to?
of my teachers, all of my maestros, we call them. No, like all the teachers that I had, like in high school and as an adult, like they were generally Colombian, which if you ask a Colombian, they're like, we have the most beautiful Spanish. Actually, if you ask anyone, they all say that.
Yeah.
But Argentine Spanish, and particularly like from Buenos Aires, there's a lot of they use vos, first of all, for you, which I never even learned how to conjugate. And then like instead of saying ayuda, like when she writes in Lipstick Help, they say ayuda.
And they have
Sabosha.
There's also like such an interesting, because there's like a lot of Italian influence in Argentina. So I wonder, ton of Italian. Some of the diction reminded me of Italian.
It is a little Italian, and that's the Colombians hate that too. Not to dwell into this world that is not mine. You know, I'm anti-diversity apparently. Clip that, Kaya. I mean, literally clip that from the podcast. But it's a great question. No, absolutely not. I was so. I couldn't follow this.
I was watching a show the other day where a character is reading Hunger Games in French. And because they know Hunger Games so well, they're hoping to like teach themselves French better.
Oh, that's good.
Because they already memorized the book. And I was like, I should do that with like Heat. You know, like watch it Heat in Spanish, teach myself Spanish by watching.
You should read like old Pelicanos novels, like Nick's Trip in any language, and seeing if it.
But I have to admit, I turned the dubs on Eternaut briefly.
Oh,
and I was like, this is not cool at all.
No, the sound of the language is
Juan,
really
where
good.
are you going, man?
Hey, hey, my guy.
Yeah.
My one thing as children get more online, like my daughter has been using Duolingo.
Yeah.
But because she is a child, it's through my email account. So I get the most intense passive-aggressive messages every day.
Oh, yeah, where it's like you've
also, she's doing 3 languages.
Oh.
So I get
messages. They say your brain's a sponge at that point. You know?
It is. And I get messages like, wow, seems like these messages aren't doing the trick. Seems like you don't really want to learn French after all. It's so mean.
Yeah.
It's so mean.
Thanks for listening. Thanks to Kaya.
Talking to me.
Thanks to John. Thanks for giving it a shot, you know? I appreciate it.
I found that really interesting from a
our conversation or the show.
Oh, our conversation I thought was.
You seemed to make you incredibly angry.
It was like the show
challenged.
Do you think it was?
I think sometimes you're like, I want to fly free. I don't want to be brought down a little bit with my opinions.
No, I was excited.
Okay.
See, listen, this is how only children we are. That like last night when you checked in with me and I was like, did you like it? And you were like, I thought it was cool. And I said, this is going to be a spicy podcast.
No, you said it was to be our biggest fight in a decade, which I assume is going back to True Detective season 1.
Yeah, possibly. By the way, that's another thing. We're like, this show doesn't have to be True Detective. Like this, the visual language and like everything is deeper. Like they're in fucking Vancouver. Why does it have to be Carcosa? You know what I mean? Chill fuck out. But I was like, that's good. And then I'm glad we're going to have, I think it's, first of all, I watch a lot of vertical video pods now, and debate is where it's at. And we're usually like, oh, that's a good point, buddy. My point is,
we actually haven't been like that. I think I've been like more like forgiving of creative decisions than you have this year.
This year?
Yeah.
You're always more even keeled than I am.
Yeah, I guess so.
But when I said maybe we'll have a disagreement, when I saw you this morning and we ran into Sean, you were like, we good? Like you thought maybe 27 years of friendship.
My wife's out of town again. It's hard to get the social cues.
29 years of friendship. Are you aware of that?
Oh, we're coming up on 30.
How are we going to mark that?
Go to Oasis.
God, that was so
Thanks
fast.
to Kaya.
So
thanks
true.
to John. Thanks to all the watch listeners and viewers. And we'll be back on Thursday to do more sci-fi in Buenos Aires.
It's kind of niche.